and welcome back to the Legal Weekly Wine, the hottest national legal news uncorked. This week, we are whining about Congress. We've got the budget and Elon Musk as the potential Speaker of the House. We have Fanni Willis being officially removed as the prosecutor on Donald Trump's Georgia case. We have the bald eagle, and stay tuned to figure out why the bald eagle is even in the news and why we would be talking about it, as well as some interesting issues regarding constitutional conventions. This is a very interesting legal quirk that is in our Constitution, and Dr. Weil is holding up a book. We've got our co-host here, Dr. John Weil of Middle Tennessee State University. He is one of the foremost experts in the country on the Constitutional Convention and has written at least one book on the convention. Is that right?
Well, I have
at least
two books, several books on the U.S. Constitutional Convention. I have a book on the Article 5 Constitutional Convention mechanism.
Okay. So we've got that to talk about. What we are doing, it's the end of 2024. And we are giving you stocking stuffers of multiple little topics that we find the most intriguing for the end of the year for those legal topics. So stay tuned for each of those. It'll probably be, we always say this and it never is, but it'll probably be a shorter episode. But those are the topics we're going to hit as our little stocking stuffer. And Chelsey is shaking her head. That is Chelsey Rogers she's an attorney from Tehrani Law LLC, and she is also one of our co-hosts with The Law Unscripted, which hosts the Legal Weekly Wine. Why are you shaking your head, Chelsey?
You said a shorter episode, but we also have the topic of bald eagles, and I have lots of thoughts and questions, so I don't know how short it's going to be completely honest.
That's really funny. Well, we're going to get to that. I'm Virginia Tehrani. I am the owner of Tehrani Law LLC, because you never need a lawyer. How you do. I'm also one of the co-owners and the hosts of The Law Unscripted, which hosts this podcast. And I do have to mention again that we have just recently changed our name. It was just the Legal Weekly Wine with an I, and now it is the Legal Weekly Wine with an H in parentheses. So you can choose to opt in or out of that H for the Weekly Wine. Check out our new graphics as well. You can find them on the podcast covers, whether it's on YouTube with the video podcast or on the audio podcasting covers. Check those out. We've got some great cartoons of the three of us there with some new thumbnails. And happy holidays, everybody. It is the end of 2024.
And Merry Christmas.
Yes, and Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Happy Hanukkah. As I understand it, I think it's actually on Christmas this year, which is pretty interesting and fun for me and exciting. So whatever you are celebrating this year, happy holidays. Enjoy the time. And hopefully this will be a little bit of fun and something interesting to end your year as you're celebrating with your family, your friends, or however you choose to celebrate the holidays. All right.
I don't know about everybody else, but I'm just celebrating that 2024 is ending, to be perfectly honest. That's what my celebration is going to be. This year's over.
Yeah, it's been a year. It really has. And I'll drink to that for sure. There's been a lot of good in the year. There has been, but it has been a year. There's also been a lot of difficulties personally, professionally, politically. Goodness, we have congratulations, everybody, for getting through the political year. Honestly, we all need a new year for that.
May I tell a quick story?
Please.
So I have a friend of a friend. They are moving to France.
Oh.
And he came by the Honors College, and I asked him why they were going to France. And he said he was so upset about the news every night, he wanted to move somewhere else. And I said, you do know that there are problems in France too, right? He says, yes, but he doesn't know the language, so he won't have to worry about it.
Honestly, incredible problem-solving skills. That sounds...
the other that fits in with that, if you'll notice, Trump has been sort of punking Trudeau and the Canadians by referring to him as the governor of the 51st state.
I can't wait until we induct a new state. I'm excited.
But I mean, the
large
question is, what happens after elections? Where do people go if it becomes the 51st state? France, I guess. That's
France.
the answer.
I have a friend whose father lives in Norway, and I was like, I think I need to pull out my passport, and maybe we can both go over there. So let's get into this for our actual wine without the H. Chelsey, have you got your standard?
Surprise to nobody, we have another Franzia boxed wine. It's winter, so it's the red one. Catching every grocery aisle you can go to. It's there. Promise.
And Dr. Vile's keeping himself awake with a Pepsi. And I am ending the year with my final run for the Sonoma Coast La Crema Chardonnay. So that's my final wine. I swear I'm going to have another for the new year, maybe something a little holiday festive. I love cinnamon things. So I'll be honest. I had one holiday party this year that I attended, and the best part of all of it was the fireball that showed up. Is this one guy always bring fireball? I do not have that with me, but that was certainly the cinnamon flavor of the year. And he's like, no, I brought dessert. So we had a funny time on that. So cheers, everybody, to the end of 2024 and the beginning of 2025 very soon. Now, we have many things to cover. Our first stocking stuffer, because we've let it kind of ruminate, I think needs to be the bald eagle that we pull out.
Absolutely.
You were so excited about this, Dr. Vile.
I am, because I have written a book called, several years back, Bald Eagle and Its Legacy, an encyclopedia of the high-flying American icon in U.S. history.
So, Chelsey's flying for us.
Everybody assumes, including Chelsey, I believe, that the eagle must have been all along the national bird, right? The national, sort of like E pluribus unum, and in God we trust.
It's the symbol.
But alas, no. We have never voted to make it the national bird until Preston Cook stepped forward. Great man. I haven't met him.
Good job,
brave
Mr.
leader.
Cook.
A brave leader in these trying times.
He's a Minnesotan who has collected something like 40,000 eagles.
Oh, my heavens. Not the real ones.
Like actual eagles?
Well, no, symbols.
Okay.
Books, articles, pictures.
Just imagine
statues.
I'm just imagining him with 40 eagles, like sleigh dog style, is what I'm picturing.
You never know, what will prompt somebody. But apparently, he saw a movie which somebody said you never have too many eagles. And so he has collected something like 40,000 of them. I believe he started in California and then moved this to a museum in Minnesota. And he realized during this research that although the eagle was put on the U.S. seal, it was never officially, the eagle itself was never officially adopted as a national bird. And so just this week, as I understand it, both houses of Congress have adopted a bill making it the national bird. And I feel confident that our outgoing President Biden, although he hasn't been otherwise terribly active, surely will put his signature to making the bald eagle the national bird. And
this is legal. We have a law now about the bald eagle. What great national news!
And by the way, let me deal with a misconception that's misunderstood. So everybody, I'm going to throw it out to you. This is not prior rehearsed.
No.
I'm waiting for Chelsey.
What do we think Benjamin Franklin wanted the national bird, the national symbol to be?
Is it a bird? Is it a bird?
What?
Is it a bird or is it a different animal?
Yes.
Okay. I was going to say he had weird pets, though. He had like a pet squirrel. So if it's a bird, I'm out.
So he is often quoted, not incorrectly, but out of context, as advocating that the turkey should be the national bird because, according to him, it was a more noble bird and whatever. But it turns out that this was written to a daughter, if I remember, or granddaughter. It was written in jest. And it was written at the time, all of us know, right, the Society of Cincinnatus.
Oh, sure. We all know that.
Yeah, of course, everybody knows that. Okay.
No, exactly, obviously.
Right. So after the Revolutionary War, some of the bigwigs the generals got together and decided we ought to have a society that will be all the people and their descendants who fought in the Revolutionary War, not unlike our modern Sons of the American Revolution. Or
Right.
DAR,
Daughters.
like the daughters, yeah.
And they adopted as a symbol an eagle. But when they got it made, it looked a little bit like a turkey. And Benjamin Franklin did not like, and I had the same concerns. He was concerned about hereditary societies. Because just because your father or great, 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 great grandfather fought in the Civil War or the Revolutionary War or whatever doesn't necessarily mean that you're any braver or truer than anybody else. And so he was mocking the society, and he later, by the way, accepted membership in it, which is another little wrinkle on the story.
He's so quirky. He's my favorite historical. Favorite.
That, and if you can imagine eating the national bird every Thanksgiving, or putting an eagle on top of a flagpole, you can see, only Benjamin Franklin probably could have come up with something like this. If you know the do-good essays, you know about them?
You were completely off of my knowledge today.
When he was like 18 years old, he wrote this series of essays pretending to be like a 42-year-old woman or 50-year-old older woman and giving all this advice. And it took years before people realized that it was that he was the one who was writing it.
He's one of the best historical figures, and I cannot be convinced otherwise.
He's really funny.
As a young child, I had a slight obsession with Ben Franklin for a long time. I really thought he was so cool. Like, he's so strange. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like, he was so odd to me. I was like, maybe history isn't boring. And here we are.
Yeah.
Well, the fact that this bird wasn't actually the bird is really confounding.
Not even national bird. Virginia, you can tell me if you didn't know this. Maybe I'm the dumb one, which is possible. I thought it was the national animal. Like, not just bird, but like
no, the bison is the national.
Well, I didn't know that either.
That's only fairly recently.
I'm thinking like any college has a mascot, and like obviously America Eagle, like track.
Right.
And by the way, foreigners think that's nuts.
Really?
Apparently.
Why?
They don't have mascots for sports teams like we do.
Wait, what?
Yeah,
is that real?
According to 10 amazing facts about foreigners in the U.S. that I learned over the last week. Apparently, when they see an eagle or a bear or pony or whatever,
it has no connotation.
Badger, yeah.
Interesting. Well, yeah.
Tiger, I guess
kind of always thought it was.
Yeah.
But that and Uncle Sam.
That's like a universal thing.
Anyway, we have righted it wrong.
We have. We've made it legal.
The eagle will soar. The eagle has landed. Yes.
So, Congress can't pass a budget, but they can approve a national bird. We love that. Love that.
Okay, so speaking of...
And actually, good transition, right?
Yes,
Congress can adopt
a bird.
A national bird, but we're having a little bit of trouble with the budget.
Government shutdown.
Possible government shutdown. And I still haven't quite figured out whether it's Friday evening, or Saturday evening that the government is going to close. They're going to have to stop paying servicemen and writing Social Security checks and the like.
Yeah.
This happens about every year or so.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't spend money unless you first increase the debt ceiling.
Yeah.
And my understanding is Democrats had negotiated, or Republicans, Speaker Johnson had negotiated what he thought was a decent deal with the Republicans. With the Democrats. They were willing to go along. And President-elect Elon Musk. Friend of President-elect Elon Musk.
Oh my goodness, that's a Freudian slip.
He's the wizard behind the curtain. Let's not forget.
Okay. Says no way, and everything blew up on him. And now they're trying to figure out, are we going to? And one of the things there are a couple. Part is, do you combine this with the continuing aid for the hurricane victims? Do you combine it with, other things? And part is it, are we going to, one proposal is that we just ignore the debt ceiling for the next 2 years or so, which would mean that Republicans could presumably pass a tax cut without worrying about the consequences for the budget.
But what does Elon Musk have to do with it? Why would that matter for Congress?
Well, it's the politics of chaos. We elected Trump knowing he was a disruptor. I don't know that this romance will last. I suspect that it'd be very, if anybody tries to steal too many headlines from Donald Trump, he's likely to find himself in trouble.
You can't have two egos that large in the same room.
Yeah.
You just can't.
Well, it's hard to have two people with that size egos in the country, much less
You would hope so, but here we are.
But I mean, it doesn't particularly bode well. Now, that being said, we've come up to the line many times, and often there will be, most political parties don't want to be known as the people who stop government workers from getting their checks, particularly when it comes like the U.S.
Especially before Christmas.
Right, especially before Christmas. Grinch.
My mom worked for the government. They sent them an email 2 days ago that was like, hey, guys. Hey, guys, don't know if you're aware.
Wow. So, and speaking of Elon Musk and the budget in Congress, you have mentioned to us, which is why we're putting this in here as one of our stocking stuffers for the end of the year. And it's funny because you are not wrong, Dr. Weil, that most people don't know this. Is that there is a rumor that Elon Musk could be or would be Speaker of the House of Representatives.
And this came up about 2 years ago so Musk is playing a role similar to what Donald Trump was playing 2 years ago, in the middle of a Republican presidency, telling Republicans, no, don't vote for this, even if it had been before.
Right.
And it was pointed out that the Constitution, the House chooses its own speaker, but it doesn't require that the speaker be able to vote or even be a member. So it is possible that we could have a Speaker of the House who is not elected. Yes.
I'm sorry. Chelsey, for those of you who are listening to the audio and aren't seeing the YouTube video of this, Chelsey is on the edge of her seat, raising her hand in the background to be able to
Because I have
speak.
a question.
She knows I'm a college professor, that I'm used to looking at raised hands. Yes.
Excuse me, Dr. Weil. What do you mean you don't have to be a member? What do you mean? How? I thought.
In other words, if the House chose you,
but you don't have to be a member of the House.
Just imagine that the law unscripted.
Pick me.
Goes viral.
Tag me in.
And people say, that girl Chelsey, we might not get anything done, but we'd have a great time here in the House. Let's choose her as our speaker.
It would be so much fun.
Ever.
Right.
Y'all, it would be so much fun, except I really love Robert's Rules of Order. It would not be fun for very long because I love it. No, okay, so I'm so serious. You're telling me doesn't have to be a member of the House? Like, how is that possible?
It's not actually in the Constitution.
Well, I guess it's just,
the
is this
House
like the thing?
Choose its speaker.
Is this just like the thing where it's like they never thought they would have to say you can't have a felon as president? So it's like they would never thought they were going to have to say you can't pick somebody who's not in the House. Like, is this what's happening?
Possibly, although one could conceive of someone who was not elected. Particularly, think about the House.
Yeah.
The largest district that anyone has in the House is maybe Wyoming, right?
Yeah.
I think they only have one representative.
Really?
So, but most of them represent, oddly 750,000 people in the United States.
Yeah.
It could very well be that one of those 435 people that we've chosen would not be as good. I mean, think of somebody, I was throwing in there, somebody like a Colin Powell, or someone like a Dwight D. Eisenhower before he became president. That we could say, well, here's, and maybe this would be better. Let's have an outside perspective. Here's a person who's established himself. Here's the richest man in the world. He must be doing something right. He's got to be a smart guy. Let's put him in charge. I'm not saying, now understand, we've never had an outsider.
Right. I think you're going to hear me say the most un-Chelsey thing possible, which is really messing with me right now, because I feel like somebody should have to be able to get into the house before they can be in charge of it. I'm sorry. That just doesn't make any sense to me. And I'm not normally a process person. I love creative solutions. I hate this. I hate this so much.
Well, I don't think it's going to happen.
Okay, good. I'm stressing over here. For audio listeners, I am stressed. I am over
visibly
head
stressed.
and hands. I'm stressed.
I mean, what if you chose, for example, an ex-president? You had a time of crisis. Everybody was at each other's throats, and somebody says, well, I mean, Jimmy Carter's way too old.
Right.
But
why not? Why not?
Jimmy Carter was an honorable man.
Why
he
not?
was, recognized by both sides. Let's see if he could do it.
Let's roll him in on his deathbed. Why not? At this point, or we just pick somebody at random. Give me a phone book. Let's just
the
pick somebody.
lottery. It's like the lottery.
That's actually very democratic.
That's what I'm thinking.
Greeks in ancient Greece.
Oh, interesting.
They did choose some candidates simply by lot.
I like that idea because I don't think we would be having people voting to raise their salaries when they're already too high.
Now that's another interesting aspect. One of the reasons that Musk objected to the bill was he said they're giving themselves a 40% pay raise. They were doing nothing of the kind.
Well, no.
It's a little proposed, they haven't had a pay raise in about 10 years.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
There's a law that automatically gives them a cost of living adjustment unless they bow out, and they have bowed out.
Okay.
Then what was really not? I mean, compared to other professionals, they're not overpaid. Now,
well, I think my hot take for the podcast is I don't think the representatives should get to make any more than the average median salary of the people they represent. So.
Well, if you did that, of course, you would be excluding. This is a problem, at the Constitutional Convention, Benjamin Franklin, who we've mentioned earlier, Franklin wanted the president to serve without pay.
Yes.
And the problem with that...
So nobody would want it.
Well, no, not that.
I think you'd want it.
I mean, Trump could easily serve without pay. He doesn't need...
all the power, even without the money.
But a lot of people could not be president if you couldn't be paid. And the very kind of people that you're concerned about, right?
That's the problem that we have in these states. We have gone so off course, but they have the state legislatures that are not full time. And so you basically have to have people who are wealthy enough to take off 3, 4, 5 months.
That's right.
And it's that's difficult. And you're I don't want them to be making a whole bunch of money, but I would like people who are not independently wealthy to be able to represent their state.
Sure.
Well, how much of a majority has to decide on who the speaker is?
Well, you have to have a majority of the House.
Just a simple majority.
And typically it's the almost always, maybe always in recent times, it's the head of the majority party. So it's one of the few straight line partisan votes that you have at the beginning of each Congress.
Yeah, but if we're about to have a Republican majority Congress and Trump with the MAGA party says, thou shalt elect Elon Musk, then...
Well, I don't think...
I like that you just said the MAGA party and not Republicans. I'm crying.
I'm so sorry. Am I showing a little too much? You know what? I'm drinking a little wine, drinking too much eggnog.
That's what they call themselves. I mean, I didn't want this to be the way we got a 3-party system, but we can have Democrats, Republicans, and MAGA. We can. I'm okay with that. I'm okay to slice that out.
Okay, so moving on to our last stocking stuffer of national legal topics to end the year. Let's talk about.
We got 2 more at least.
I feel like
I have a surprise one.
1.5. I have the Constitutional Convention, not the original, but new constitutional
Willis.
conventions and and Fanni Willis.
Right.
So
Okay.
let's talk briefly about Fanni Willis. We do have some prior podcasts about her and the issues with potential removal of her as prosecutor of the Georgia criminal case against Donald Trump. So let's briefly talk about her and then go into constitutional conventions, the other side. So Fanni Willis is gone. I mean, not dead, so please don't misunderstand me, but she's essentially removed now.
She's down, but she might not be out.
Okay, so explain.
Okay, so a lower judge reviewed, if you remember, she had something of a romantic relationship with a fellow prosecutor.
Who was contractually brought in.
Right.
As a
and
special.
There was some question as to whether they also shared expenses, and there was some question as to whether one was gaining more than the other, and whether they had a mutual incentive to try to keep the case going as long as they could, so they would both be paid.
Right.
The trial judge, as I understood it, slapped her around a little bit and said this was, unusual. It had the appearance of impropriety, but in that judge's judgment was not enough to take her off the case. Hadn't affected the facts in the case, hadn't really affected the indictment. So what happened this week is the Court of Appeals in Georgia, it's December 19th, okay. Court of Appeals, Judge Brown looked over the situation and said, so that there are two issues. One is, should she continue in this role? And the prosecution, by the way, this is the state side.
Correct.
Of, did former President Donald Trump, or I guess he was still president. Anyway, did Trump illegally try to get votes changed to alter the election results in 2020?
Based on state law.
Right, right, state law. And the lower court judge said, well, there's an appearance of impropriety here, but it doesn't seem to affect the facts of the case. Somebody else probably could have prosecuted, would have come to the same conclusion. He kept her in. So then the appeal is, should she have been kept in, and should the case just be altogether dismissed? Yeah. And you have a split verdict. The court says the case shouldn't continue with Fanni Willis in charge, but the facts are still the same. It can continue.
And which court is that's made the decision?
This is a court of appeals in the state of Georgia.
Okay.
And I honestly cannot tell from reading this. There's a Judge Brown who issues a decision, and his decision is that she should have, that because of the appearance of impropriety, that she should be removed, but that the case should continue. Now, I was more convinced by a Judge Land's dissent, in which he said, and again, I don't know Georgia law well enough, so it's possible if I knew Georgia law better, I would come to a different conclusion. But he says under Georgia law, it's the trial court. This is basically an issue of fact. Did the appearance here actually affect the reality of the prosecution? And he says that's for them to decide. It's sort of like in a jury. The jury decides the facts.
They're the fact
the court
finder.
Decides the law. And he says the Court of Appeals has no business relitigating the facts that the trial judge came to. So my guess is it would now go to the Georgia Supreme Court. Now, what's fascinating is special prosecutor, give me his name. Why am I missing it?
Oh,
Jack Smith?
Jack Smith.
Yeah.
Okay. Jack Smith has dropped the federal charges.
Correct.
And the Supreme Court has given the president fairly significant immunity for most of what he does in office. And you would think that if the president is immune from federal prosecution, that there would be even greater reason to give him immunity from state prosecution. So will this make any difference overall? Maybe not, but it raises a fairly interesting question here.
Yeah.
Well, if you're wanting more about Fanni Willis and the cases and what's happening with her, check out our prior podcasts. We are on number 90, by the way. We've published 90. This is number 92. So in the spring coming up, we're moving into another season of our show, and we will be hitting episode 100 of the Weekly Wine.
We need to do something fun. Give us some ideas to celebrate, guys. We need to do something fun for that.
We definitely do. We're doing the stocking stuffers today, but yeah, we've got to do something a little bit different and unique for our 100th episode coming up. But before we get there, let's do the talk about the Constitutional Convention option. Dr. Viles holding up yet another book that I believe is his.
University of Georgia, Conventional Wisdom, the alternate Article 5 mechanism for proposing amendments to the U.S. Constitution. And it's been a couple years since I wrote this. I honestly don't remember which year it is. 2016. So it's
super relatable. I totally get that.
I don't remember when that book that I last wrote was published.
Just can't keep straight all the books I've written.
Anyway,
truly.
What's fascinating is, we had a constitutional convention, national, back in 1787.
The original one for our Constitution.
Yeah, well, yes. And it was, to some degree, it was either illegal or extra legal. I prefer to say extra legal. It wasn't the mechanism that was designed by the Articles of Confederation. It was sort of a desperation measure. Articles of Confederation aren't working. We need an alternative. Let's call a convention. Conventions at the time were sort of like referenda today. They were regarded as, they embodied the will of the people. So if you believe in popular sovereignty or all, we the people, then people have the right to make their own choices. So when they devised under the Articles, you had to have unanimous state consent to constitutional amendments. And that's why the Articles never got officially amended, why they call the Constitutional Convention. And essentially at the convention, they set up a mechanism that to amend the Constitution, 2/3 of both houses of Congress propose, 3/4 of the states approve. And it's pretty much sailing through till about the last week, and somebody says, well, what if Congress just won't do anything? Imagine that. Imagine having a Congress that's unresponsive to the American people. But, they were far-sighted people. They thought this could possibly happen sometime.
This one they could
conceive of. So they came up
of.
with an alternate mechanism. If 2/3 of the states submit a call to Congress for a convention, then Congress is obligated to call one. But presumably what the convention did would not go into effect until it would still have to be ratified if you follow the law according to 3/4 of the states. So there are some people, and this is not a new, I wrote the book 8 years ago, but early in the century, 1915-ish, there were many states who were calling for a constitutional convention for direct election of senators. And they never called a convention, but as they began creeping up to the number necessary, Congress said, well, we'd rather just propose an amendment than take our chances on a convention. After 1962, Baker versus Carr, Reynolds versus Sims, states have to be reapportioned. States made a big effort and came within 1 to 3 states, it varies, people say, of having the 2/3 necessary to call a convention. So from time to time, balanced budget. Everybody says they want it, but we never get it. Or we haven't had it since Clinton, I guess, was president. Prayer in schools. We've had a lot of presidents who say we ought to repeal, overturn Engel versus Vitale and permit public prayer in public schools. So anti-abortion, pro-life or pro-choice.
It's been a huge one that's been called for.
Yeah, let's have a convention, settle it once for all.
Right, gay marriage.
And Republicans right now, they got House, narrow, Senate, narrow, presidency. Some people think they have the Supreme Court in their pocket. That's probably an overstatement. But they have more of a majority than they've had in the past.
Right.
Maybe this is the time for all these pet Republican projects to call a constitutional convention. Now, the problem is there are all kinds of ambiguities surrounding the convention. Constitution doesn't say how it would be apportioned, how delegates would be selected, what majorities they would have to have, et cetera, et cetera.
Who would even attend?
Who would attend, right. Presumably, anything that it did would still be subject to ratification by 3/4 of the states. But we do know that the current Constitution bypassed the mechanism for ratification under the Articles of Confederation. So the convention is something of a boogeyman. I personally don't think it's likely to be called. One of the things that's happened is states that have called for liberal states that have called for a convention have rescinded or tried to rescind their calls. And one of the biggest problems is, does a convention have to center on a single topic?
Right.
Can you call a limited could we call a convention simply to deal with balanced budgets?
Right.
I think that we can, but some people say, and it doesn't say that. It says call a convention for proposing amendments. Can propose what it wants to. So there are a lot of issues connected to it, and I don't think we're going to have one, but or not in the near future at least. But it is, it's there for a reason. It's there because Congress could be out of touch with the American people, and this gives us an alternate route. But by the same token, maybe state legislators could be out of touch too.
Right. Well, I have to say, Dr. Weil, for Christmas, if I could give you anything, I would want this to happen just so you could actually see it during your lifetime.
Would prefer yes, I would be. Yeah, I would definitely have to quit my job and have somebody hire me there to participate. Yes.
I just feel like you're.
I do love my country.
Yes,
and I would prefer to have a functioning country. Although, again, I don't believe it would be a disaster. I don't believe it would be a disaster. So maybe
let's full send it chaos. Let's see what happens. Let's put the Constitution to its limits right now for 2025. I'm down.
It is in the Constitution. It is part of our law.
Yes.
Let's go. All three of us are in different states. Let's go, guys. That would be so fun.
For Christmas, we're just going to pull this out.
Some groups, particularly conservatives, tend to see this more of an option than liberals do.
Well,
but some have held some mock conventions, to try to act. And I think one of the most fascinating things is how would it be apportioned? And my own view would be, although I can think of a problem with it, my own view would be that you would probably do it like the Electoral College.
Yeah.
You would probably give each state the number of delegates based on a compromise between. Now, the problem is
the popular,
at a convention of 538 people, you'd probably do most of the working committees. So maybe it would be doable. But the Constitutional Convention 1787, we're only 55 delegates there. It was only 42 when it came to sign. That's a much more manageable group for working on something like this probably than 535 would.
But it was much more limited population as well.
It was, and at least in our sites, the issues were easier to resolve. Maybe they didn't seem that way to the participants.
Maybe. Well, that brings me back to another comment on the Elon Musk and who's going to be the Speaker of the House. Legally speaking, as an attorney and as someone who has participated in numerous mediations over my 19 years, I have to say that honestly, someone trained in and working as a mediator should be the Speaker of the House more than anyone else, because that's what I feel like this is mediating and bringing parties together rather than just putting someone else in there who's divisive. But that's
if you want things to go well. If you want things to go funny, you need like my cousin Vinny style person.
Yes, you do. You absolutely do.
Just saying, I'm ready whenever Donald Trump call me in.
Tag
Tag me
in. Chelsey would be great, especially for entertainment and chaos purposes. This would be the end. Maybe Dr. Vile would just die at that point rather than live to see something constitutionally play out.
Yeah, no, he couldn't come because I couldn't embarrass myself in front of Dr. Vile, obviously, so I'd have to behave. He'll come be my manager.
I hope they had that effect on my daughters. I'm not sure it worked or not.
Oh, I tell you, I spent most of my life trying to behave for you.
Thank you.
I did.
It was less important, really, that I terrorize you than that I terrorize people who dated you.
No, well, you did. You really did scare them. And it was funny. I don't know if I was more scared of God or you, but, it all worked. So speaking of family, happy birthday to my mother, Dr. Vile's wife, Linda. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
All right. Happy birthday, Mom. Love you much. You have been such an inspiration to my life, to Dad's life. And we're so glad to have you, even if you're not on the podcast. We wish you happy holidays, everyone. Hopefully this was a little fun stocking stuffer time of joy and a little bit of humor through the end of the year. We truly are hoping that all of us have blessings. All of you who are listening have blessings in the new year. We certainly will not be limited in our hottest legal topics of the week. We will uncork them all in the new year. In the meantime, yes. You always stop me near the end. What is it?
I need to, because
all right.
In this editorial that we referred to last time by Pope Francis.
Yes, our joke, yes.
He mentioned that John Paul II, one of the most revered modern popes.
Right.
Was
I'm waiting for it.
Some of his fellow bishops, before he became pope, were looking down on him because he liked to ski. And they thought that was sort of inappropriate for a bishop.
Why?
And his
Am I down?
well,
Why?
it's, because bishops are supposed to do spiritual kind of
But
things.
they're not supposed to have fun.
Yeah, not that kind of,
I'm
not
how else do you see God if you're not
obvious kind of
pouring down his
And so his response to one of the bishops who told him he thought it was unseemly, he says, well, you may not know this, but he says 50% of all the bishops in Poland engage in this activity. Nobody considers it unusual in Poland. Of course, there were only 2 bishops at the time, and he was one of them. So anyway.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's fun. Well, may you find your joy and your cheer in skiing or in reading or whatever you choose to do. Happy holidays, everyone. We're so excited to see you in the new year. Check out our new title, our new graphics. Give us a line and a thought for what you want to see next year, and especially in our 100th episode. And don't forget to check out thelawunscripted.com as well as Dr. Vile's books. They are certainly applicable to today and many others. I cannot list them all. But for some reading, certainly check out his resume on the Honors College website for Middle Tennessee State University. It's quite impressive, and the number of books and even the covers are beautiful.
Get in the comments and tell him to start vlogging. Look, this is my personal mission, and I need the commenters to get on board.
Everybody do a vote, right? This is a democracy. Let's do some voting. Let's do some elections.
Yes.
But thank you both, Dr. Vile, Chelsey. It has been a pleasure this year. I'm so glad that you were with me. I love what we have created with the Legal Weekly Wine, and I'm glad that you all are here with me as my co-hosts. So Merry Christmas to you, and we will catch you next year on the Legal Weekly Wine.